Hello everybody, Brad here today and welcome back to Project Hospital. I hope you're all doing okay. So in this video we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and I'm going to be speaking about ideas, opinions, suggestions on what I think and what other people have kind of spoken to me about on what we would like to see come into Project Hospital in the future. So let's kick it off, and the first one that I'm going to start with is kitchens and cafeterias. So I love that they implemented cafeterias in the Hospital Services DLC. I think that was a really cool addition to the game. It's really awesome to see staff using cafeterias, picking up food, sitting down at a table and eating and drinking. However, I think what would be really cool in the future is to see patients and staff queuing up for food and then obviously getting food. What would be really cool is to see a separate staff type, so like a cook or a chef or a kitchen worker, and it's actually their job solely to prepare and then put out the food. You could have janitors which actually have to go in to the cafeteria or kitchen and clean up. I think it would be a really cool addition to the game to actually see people use the cafeteria in a lot more of a realistic way, to actually see them queuing up for food, eating food, kind of sitting down with colleagues and conversing about whatever they converse about. But I just think the cafeterias and kitchens could be used a lot more in the game. The second item on my list of things that I would love to see come into the game are actual real life events, and what I mean by this are things like fires. So we have the amazing mod that gives us decorational pieces which include fire extinguishers, fire alarms, fire hoses, fire axes. But it'd be really interesting to see actual fires come into the game. It would be something that would be really cool. You could also do things like flooding. I'm not sure, obviously, guys, about the strict coding restrictions here. The game, it might not be possible for these things to come into the game, but things like fires, flooding, a terrorist attack, these things could be obviously the horrible things, but it could be interesting to see them in a game like this. So another thing which is always highly requested when I have a look at these kind of things are stairs and basements. So stairs would be amazing. I'm sure we've all had those issues with elevators when we've got them on one floor but we don't want them on the other side, and it gets a bit complicated with the elevators because sometimes we don't want elevators in certain places in our hospitals. So stairs would be awesome. I'd really love to see stairs come into the game, and also basements would be really interesting. And a basement would be the perfect place to put your pathology department. So if we had basements in the game, that ability to go at least one level below ground level, we could really try and increase realism into our hospitals. Things like pathology in the basement. We often talk about this kind of thing on our Discord group, and James actually brought up a really interesting one, which was utilities. So having some kind of power and water system, a little bit like in Prison Architect, and that can have some really interesting downstream effects on the game, right? So you could have like a power outage where you can't do any operations or anything like that during a power outage. Water could be quite an interesting one. Could you get an epidemic through the water supply? Obviously these are just ideas floating around my head, guys, but we could have some very interesting gameplay aspects by having utilities such as power and water coming into the game. Another idea that I've thought about when thinking about other games such as Theme Hospital and 2 Point Hospital was the idea of having people coming into your hospital as inspectors. So health inspectors, a health board could come into your hospital. They can make sure your hospital is clean, that you have hired qualified staff, that you have the necessary equipment in place to be able to treat patients in a really effective, clean and hygienic manner. One idea that I really liked, I believe, was mentioned by Blala in my Discord server, and it was that instead of patients just helplessly just lying there in bed looking like they're just in their dizziest daydreams, actually being able to watch TV. So in the UK, most hospital beds have a TV actually attached to an arm on your bed, and you can swing it around and watch Netflix and Amazon Prime to your heart's content. It'd be really cool to see a few things that patients can do in bed, such as read or actually talk to a visitor or watch TV. It could be really interesting and really give your hospital a little bit of injected life, especially in these wards that at the moment a little bit lifeless. The list of new departments is endless, guys. We could see loads of new departments come into the game. We could have genetics, we could have dentistry, we could have physiotherapy, especially with wheelchairs and bandages coming into the game, and casts. We could see psychiatry come into the game, you know, something where there's a little bit less surgery involved and a little bit more talking through the patient about what's actually happening inside their head. The list of departments, I think, is just vast, and it'll be really interesting to see what they kind of think about when it comes to thinking about new departments to bring into the game. And my last idea, guys, kind of revolves around creating a new game. So it's something I've mentioned a couple times. I think I might have mentioned it again on the live stream, is the actual ability to select what kind of hospital we're intending to build. So here, look, when I'm trying to create a new game in Sandbox, I have these lovely pre-made hospitals, and they're named clinic and small hospital and medium hospital and big hospital, and then we have the empty fields here. But what would be really cool is if we could select an empty field and then have some kind of selection process here where we can actually say what we're intending to build on this Sandbox empty field. You know, are we intending to build a small GP's clinic where, you know, we'd have a really reduced patient intake, maybe with a few specialised rooms? So for example, in a GP's clinic you'd have a lot more doctors' offices, or would you actually have a room actually called like a GP's office? If you wanted to build a small hospital, then your patient intake would increase slightly, and maybe in these hospitals you can actually start to build out things like specialised departments. You know, I wish that we could have some kind of granularity when it comes to what we're building, and not just have that really general, you can build whatever you want, which is great. But it'd be nice to see the gameplay actually reflect what kind of size hospital we're building and then managing. Because, you know, multiple people have said to me in the past that all they want to do is build a small clinic. However, the game kind of forces them to put in more and more departments and more staff, and then you start going outside of what you were intending to build, don't you? So I think that's quite interesting. I really don't know if that's possible at all. I can't see why not, because I know that lots of the modders, the amazing modders for this game, I know that the plastic surgery department had a really reduced patient intake. So I don't know, it might be possible to mod that. I wonder if you could actually mod that into the game, that, you know, you select something here. If you're building a clinic, you know, you have a reduced patient intake. However, if you're building something like a big hospital, your maximum staff count and your patient intake is much higher. It's just an idea. I just think it would be a really cool spin on the game. Another thing is a couple of people have mentioned to me some really interesting bits, like different game modes. Like, could you actually have a mode where it's your job to build a war hospital, you know, so you haven't got much infrastructure behind you, you're in a desert or something, and it's your job to build like a pop-up hospital and try and treat as many military personnel as possible. That was a really cool idea. One was, could you go back a few decades and try and build an older hospital? You know, the game really centres itself around building a modern hospital, but, you know, could that be a future DLC, having a DLC where we get loads of equipment and uniforms and wall decor, doors, windows that have that more of an older feel to it? Again, I just think it could be really interesting, and it could give another spin onto the game. So those are my kind of ideas, guys. Please remember to comment down below with your suggestions, ideas, feedback. I really hope Oxymoron sees this, because it's such an awesome game, and I you know, they've got such a cool development opportunity here to really listen to us, what we're saying, listen to our feedback, and hopefully implement some of these things in the future. It will be very interesting to come back, you know, like a year's time or a few years' time, and, you know, really see how this game has progressed, because now and when it first came out, it has progressed a long way. I just really hope that these new DLCs that we're seeing coming out are going to add more and more content every time, because just adding a new department sometimes, well, especially for me, just isn't enough. I don't want a DLC that just adds a new department. I would love to see some new, really refreshing gameplay here in Project Hospital. Remember to take care of yourself, guys, and I will see you very shortly, hopefully, for the Traumatology DLC first look. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you later. Thank you very much for watching the video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel down below if you haven't done so already. And please feel free to follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Have a great day. See you later.